The xenobiologist Dr. Vrinix of the Tandoori Confederation presented his findings to the assembled council with the unshakable confidence of a lifetime of study. His homeworld, a high-gravity planet where the atmospheric pressure could crush unshielded visitors, had produced a species of immense physical density and strength. To a Tandoori, gravity was the ultimate arbiter of life. It shaped bone density, muscle mass, and the very possibility of existence. For the past 10 cycles, and his research had focused on the sapient species of the galaxy, and his conclusion was absolute, a law of nature he had personally codified. No organism with a central nervous system and a hydraulic circulatory system can survive a sustained environment below one standard G-force unit, Vrinix stated, his voice a low rumble that resonated in the chamber's dense atmosphere. The heart cannot pump blood effectively, the muscles, having no resistance to work against, atrophy. The very structure of the cell relies on gravitational pressure to maintain its integrity. Below that threshold, the organism simply fails. It is a fundamental principle. The other council members, beings of varied forms from methane-breathing Arcturans to silicon-based life from the Cygnus fields, murmured their agreement. Vrinix was the authority. His word was the final word on biological adaptation. All eyes then turned to the far end of the conference table, where a single human delegate sat. He was a diplomat named Kenji Tanaka, a man of average build from a planet called Earth. To the Tandoori, he looked impossibly fragile, a bag of mostly water and soft tissue held together by a flimsy calcium framework. His presence here, on this high-gravity world, was only possible due to the advanced inertial dampeners built into the floor of the diplomatic chamber, and the discreet, humming life support unit beneath his chair. Vrinix's large, the multifaceted eyes fixed on the human. He had studied the files on humanity, a species from a middling world with a gravity of precisely 1G. They were, by his definition, the weakest possible form of spacefaring life. They were outliers, anomalies who had somehow slipped through the cracks of the universe's strict physical laws, achieving spaceflight through sheer, baffling persistence. They were the subject of his next and most conclusive paper. The human delegation has raised concerns about our trade route proposals, Vrinix continued, his tone dismissive. They cite the well-being of their crews on long-haul flights. This is a biological impossibility. Your crews live in a state of perpetual physical stress. The fact that you have reached the stars at all is a testament to your technology, not your biology. Your bodies are not designed for the void. They are designed for the crushing, unnecessary force of 1G. Kenji listened patiently. He had heard similar pronouncements before, from a dozen different species, each one certain that their own planetary conditions represented the universal baseline for life. He leaned forward slightly, his voice calm and measured. Dr. Vrinix, your research is, as always, thorough, but I believe there's a nuance you've missed. You said no organism survives under 1G. You've studied our physiology, our bone density, our muscle mass. You've seen the data from our own space stations. Of course, Vrinix rumbled. Pleased the human acknowledged his expertise. We have observed the microgravity environments your species creates. Your own medical logs show the effects. Bone decalcification, muscle atrophy, fluid shifts. It is a degenerative state. Your bodies begin to fail the moment you leave your planet's surface. You must exercise constantly, take medications, and even then you are damaged. You are not surviving, Mr. Tanaka. You are merely delaying the inevitable decline. That's one way to look at it, Kenji conceded with a slight nod. He paused for a moment, letting the silence in the chamber stretch. Then he asked a simple question, his tone genuinely curious, not confrontational. Then why am I not smashed? The translator units hummed, struggling with the colloquialism. Smashed? a Zorblack's council member clicked. Crushed, Kenji clarified, gesturing vaguely at the high ceiling far above them. We're in a room with a gravity field of, what, 2.5 Gs? My people can't live here without help. The dampeners under my chair are keeping my immediate environment at a comfortable 1 G. But I'm curious. You say my biology is barely adequate for my own world. You say 0 G is a slow death sentence. So by your logic, my body shouldn't be able to handle anything more than 1 G either. The slightest increase should be catastrophic. So if the dampeners in this room were to fail, what would happen to me? Vrinix blinked, his multiple eyelids sliding shut and open in a slow, contemplative rhythm. It was a hypothetical he had never considered. He had only studied the lower end of the spectrum. He accessed his personal data files, pulling up the human physiological database. At 2.5 Gs, your blood pressure would become unsustainable, he began, reciting facts from rote memory. Your heart would be unable to pump blood from your lower extremities to your brain. But you would lose consciousness within seconds. The increased load on your skeleton would likely cause fractures in your vertebrae and long bones. Your internal organs would be compressed, leading to massive internal trauma. You would be, as you say, smashed by your own weight. Kenji smiled, a strangely unsettling expression to the Tandoori. That's a very good textbook answer, and for most species, it's completely accurate. He reached for a glass of water on the table in front of him, and his movements slow and deliberate in the enhanced gravity his chair was negating. He took a sip. But humans are a little different. You see, we didn't evolve on Earth. We evolved because of Earth. The 1 G you see as a baseline, we see as a compromise. He set the glass down. My world has a dynamic range of gravity. Not much, not like a gas giant, but enough. We have mountains and deep ocean trenches that create minute variations. But more importantly, we have motion. We run, we jump, we fall. From the moment we're born, our bodies are subjected to constant, sudden, and extreme changes in G-force. A child jumping from a swing experiences a moment of 0 G, followed by a brief period of increased force upon landing. A fighter pilot pulling a sharp turn can experience 9 Gs for a few seconds. For a human, a sustained 2.5 Gs is not a death sentence. It's a really, really bad day. It's physically agonizing, debilitating, and dangerous. But it's not instantly fatal. Vrinix's central brain processor was overheating. That is impossible. The data shows the effects of sustained low-G environments, yes, Kenji interrupted gently. It shows that our bodies, optimized for 1 G, adapt poorly to less. We get weak. Our bones lose density. It's a slow decline because our bodies are no longer being challenged. But give us more gravity, that's different. We have a fight-or-flight response for a reason. And our cardiovascular system is incredibly robust and can be trained to compensate. Our muscles are capable of far more than the baseline required for standing. We have what we call a safety factor built into our very design. The human body is a machine built to handle stress, not avoid it. He stood up, a clear breach of diplomatic etiquette. The other council members stirred, but Vrinix was too captivated to object. Kenji walked a few steps away from his chair, leaving the protective bubble of his dampener. He immediately grunted, his face tightening, his movements becoming heavy and labored. He was a 70-kilogram man now weighing nearly 180 kilograms. Every step was a monumental effort, his breathing became strained, and a fine sheen of sweat appeared on his forehead. This is not pleasant, he admitted, his voice strained. My heart is working triple time. My spine is compressing. Every joint is screaming. In a few minutes, I will likely pass out. My heart will be damaged. But I am standing here, doctor. I am not smashed. I am conscious. I am talking to you. For a few minutes, at 2.5 Gs, I am functioning. He took another heavy, shuddering step, his legs trembling under the immense load. He was making a point, a dangerous and painful one. but a point nonetheless. He looked Vrinix directly in his many eyes. Your law is wrong, Doctor. It's not that no organism survives under 1G. It's that no Tandoori survives under 1G. Your biology is exquisitely tuned to your own world, just as mine is to mine. The flaw in your research was that you used your own species as the universal model for life. Vrinix stared, his world view, built on a lifetime of certainty, crumbling around him. He saw the human, this bag of water and calcium, defying what he knew to be an absolute physical law. He saw the strain, the pain, the sheer impossible effort in the human's posture. But he also saw the undeniable fact of his continued existence. The human wasn't stronger than a Tandoori. A Tandoori child could lift weights that would crush a human, but the human possessed something the Tandoori had never needed: a profound, almost terrifying resilience. They were built not for a stable, predictable environment, but for a chaotic, dangerous one. They were built to endure. And in that moment, Vrinix understood that the galaxy was far more complex and far more terrifying than he had ever imagined. The human, sweating and trembling, slowly and painfully made his way back to his chair, collapsing into it with a gasp as the dampeners relieved him of the crushing weight. The silence in the chamber was absolute. Weeks later, a formal request arrived at the Human Diplomatic Corps from Dr. Vrinix. He requested permission to visit Earth, not the orbiting stations or the diplomatic enclaves, but the surface. He wanted to experience 1G for himself. The human ambassador who received the request smiled, remembering Kenji Tanaka's story. Permission was granted with one small caveat. He would be accompanied by a human guide. The guide chosen was Lena Petrova, a former professional athlete and current deep-sea salvage operator, a woman whose body was a testament to human physical adaptability. The moment Vrinix stepped out of the Tandoori lander onto the human soil of a research station in the Siberian taiga, he felt it. To him, as it felt like a terrifying lack of pressure, a dangerous lightness. His dense muscles, accustomed to working against 2.5 Gs, now felt unmoored. Every step he took was too high, too fast. He had to consciously control his movements to avoid launching himself into the air. His inner ear, exquisitely calibrated for a high-G environment, sent conflicting signals to his brain. He felt nauseous, disoriented, and profoundly vulnerable. He was on a world that felt like a void. Lena, unbundled in a thick coat against the cold, watched him with amusement. "Feels a bit floaty, doesn't it?" she asked. "It is. Deeply unsettling," Vrinix admitted, his voice a low rumble. "My body feels as if it is falling, constantly. The sky is so high, it feels like if I jump, I will never come down." "Don't worry, you will," Lena chuckled. "Newton's law still applies here. It's just a gentler reminder." She gestured towards a clearing in the sparse forest. "Come on, let's walk. You'll get your space legs eventually." As they walked, Vrinix observed everything with his scientific instruments and his own many eyes. He saw the towering trees, their structure so different from the dense, low-lying flora of his world. They grew up, defying gravity with a tensile strength he found remarkable. He saw a bird take flight from a branch, a creature of hollow bones and feathers, something that would be instantly crushed on his homeworld. Here, it soared with effortless grace. But he saw the vast emptiness of the sky, the enormous distances, the sheer scale of a world that was not pressing down on you, but rather letting you exist within it. "This world is extravagant," he finally said. "It wastes space. It wastes energy on height and flight and thin air. It is incredibly inefficient." "It is," Lena agreed. "But that inefficiency is what created us. We had to work to get to the top of those trees. We had to chase that bird for food." We had to travel those vast distances. This world doesn't hold you down, Dr. Vrinix. It challenges you to reach up. She then took him to a place she knew well, a frozen lake, its surface a sheet of perfect black ice. She stepped out onto it, her movements sure and balanced. "Come on out," she invited. Vrinix hesitated at the edge. The surface looked impossibly slick. He extended one heavy, clawed foot and touched the ice. It was frictionless. He pulled back. "This is not a stable platform." "That's the point," Lena said. And with that, she pushed off, gliding across the ice with practiced ease, carving elegant arcs in the frozen surface. She moved with a fluidity that defied the very concept of a high-gravity species. She was grace in motion. Vrinix watched, his mind struggling to reconcile the data. This was the same species that could briefly withstand 2.5 Gs. The same species whose bodies decayed in 0 G. And now, here was one of them. Dancing on a surface with almost no friction, in a gravity field that felt like a feather's touch, with a grace and control that was utterly alien to him. The human body wasn't just resilient. It was infinitely adaptable. It could be a battering ram or a whisper on the wind. "You're kind," Vrinix said slowly as Lena glided back to the shore. "Are not a species. You are a collection of possibilities." Lena smiled, her breath misting in the cold air. "That's one way to put it. We call it being human." Later, they arrived at Lena's primary work site, a massive, partially frozen river. A large industrial barge was moored at the bank, equipped with a powerful crane and a complex diving rig. "This is where I usually work," she explained. "Salvage operations. We pull up everything from old logging equipment to sunken barges." Vrinix looked at the churning, frigid water. "You go into that?" "It's my job," she said simply. She began to suit up, but it was unlike any diving gear he had ever seen. It was a massive, pressurized exoskeleton, a powered suit of armor that hummed with hydraulic power. "For deep dives in cold water, the pressure can be immense," she explained as she climbed into the suit's open torso. "This suit lets me work at depths that would crush an unarmored submersible. It amplifies my strength, provides life support, and keeps me from being turned into a popsicle." Vrinix watched as the suit sealed around her. See its thick metal limbs and torso, making her look like a mechanical giant. Then, with a loud clank, she was lowered into the black water by the barge's crane. The water swallowed her instantly. He stared at the dark, swirling surface, the place where she had disappeared. The data from her suit was transmitted to a screen on the barge. Depth, pressure, oxygen levels, internal temperature. The numbers were staggering. The pressure at that depth was immense, far beyond what any unprotected Tandoori could endure. And she was down there, working, moving massive pieces of twisted metal on the riverbed. When she finally emerged, breaking the surface with a surge of bubbles and mist, the suit was covered in a layer of ice. The crane hauled her back onto the deck, and the suit hissed as it depressurized. The helmet unlatched, and Lena's face appeared, flushed with exertion but smiling. "Another successful day," she announced. Just a few more dives and we'll have the whole thing cleared." Vrinix approached the suit, placing a hand on its cold, wet metal. "This is your adaptation," he said, his voice filled with a new kind of wonder. "You do not evolve to fit the environment. You evolve the environment to fit you. You build shells to walk on other worlds, to swim in crushing depths, to fly in the empty sky. You are not a creature of your world. You are a creature of your minds." Lena climbed down from the suit, accepting a warm towel from a crew member. "Exactly," she said. "Our bodies give us a baseline, a starting point, a good one, I think. But our real strength is this." She tapped her temple. The ability to look at a frozen river or a high-gravity council chamber or the vacuum of space and say, "Okay, how do we make that work for us?" We don't just survive in the universe, Dr. Vrinix. We build a place for ourselves inside it. Vrinix looked from her to the powerful suit, into the frozen river, to the vast open sky above. He thought of his own people, perfectly adapted to their world, but unable to leave its crushing embrace without extensive, permanent support. They were masters of their planet, but prisoners of its gravity. Humanity, by contrast, was free. They were weak in isolation, but with their tools, their minds, and their stubborn resilience, they could go anywhere and endure anything. They were not the weakest species. They were, perhaps, at the most dangerous, simply because they refused to accept the limitations the universe tried to place upon them. The law he had held as absolute was not a law of nature. It was merely a description of his own people's limits. Humanity, he now understood, had no such limits.